390 beast. God, it's so heavy. I don't feel heavy. Please stop. Also, I've got new gearing on it. One of the smaller front sprocket. 2 provided stock. Something like that. Very interesting ride today for a number of reasons. First off, back on the 390. Haven't been on a 4-stroke since last year on a 2-day ride in New Hampshire. And the fact that I don't remember how to ride a 4-stroke becomes evident fairly soon. Also, it's a Tuesday. Thank you to Rich for dragging me out of the office midweek. I didn't miss a single thing. Plenty of torque, yes, but I did have some issues. Now I'm totally happy with it, but during the ride I was totally enraged. Well, you'll see what I mean. Otherwise, the suspension I found to be very plush. I made a couple of adjustments during the day, and a couple of clicks here and there. It seems close to dialed in, and it is on paper a heavy bike. Once it's rolling, it feels good, handles well, very agile. Bill is a gentleman's ride. Today's Tuesday. Cut out early. Once I confirmed with Rich that it was going to be a gentleman's ride, I made the decision to bring the 390. It's a heavier bike. It's a 4-stroke, which I'm not used to. But I figured if the pace is not going to be too crazy, it'd be a good chance to experiment. See how I like the bike, since I own it. Not bad, not bad. We cut out early. Rich's idea. Genius. Steep. Wait. Since I hadn't ridden a 390 in a while, I wasn't totally sure what to expect. I couldn't remember well what it's like. And in this first pretty fast rocky section here, just checking to see how's the deflection, is it tracking, how plush is the suspension. Well, as you can see, very little deflection. Suspension felt really plush, tracked straight through, and the extra inertia and centrifugal force in the engine, with so many moving parts versus a 2-stroke, really does help it track straight and true. I found out pretty quickly, though, that it was going to take some getting used to. The geometry maybe is a little different. The back brake is really grabby, which was disconcerting at first. And I think the extra weight of the bike made it harder for me. I had to recalibrate sort of how much momentum it would take to get over stuff. So it was a little rocky start, pardon the pun. And one thing that is also very different is the smoothness of the motor and the power. So opening up the engine here a little bit on this first fast section, pretty tentative still. But I'm starting to remember that it sounds sweet, pulls nice and smooth. Really a lot of fun.
Felt like it was flat, but apparently it's not. How's that?
Not bad.
Like a Cadillac?
Well, it's more like a trophy truck, like your 450. You can't be a retard, so that could prove challenging. You got torque. Diving into the first really technical section with some big rocks and ups and downs, this is where I started to feel the clutch dragging, and so even when the leather was all the way in, it was still slightly engaged. I didn't know that's what it was, but I could feel it. Tracking through here was really good, very happy with that. No, it's not a cross trainer. It's a lot heavier. You can't really throw it around. It's a different style. But I'm still riding it like it's a cross trainer. Flipping the throttle, and you see I start stalling. I figured this out, that I was riding like a two-stroke with the throttle off and on, really low in the revs, and that just is not the right formula for a four-stroke. Got to keep the thing spinning so that internally, the engine internals have the momentum to keep delivering power even when they get short bursts of stress, like when you hit a rock or a short uphill or a log, something like that. If you don't do that, this is what happens. Fuck. Now I remember what I hate about this bike. Stop. With that engine note a little raspier there, higher up in the rev range, the bike also comes alive, feels much better. Eventually, I figured it out. That's where you need to ride it, like, all the time. Ride a little bit faster, ride a little bit higher in the rev range, change your gear selection a little bit, and it really does deliver. Of course, I figured that out in 2 minutes on this video, but it took me about half an hour on the trail. A little later in the ride here, you'll see what I mean by still riding it like a two-stroke, or you'll see what the downside of that is. I come to a little drop-off, give it a little blip, but since I'm at, like 500 RPM instead of like 4,000 RPM, it does nothing. The front just dives right here. So instead of lifting the front up and over, it just drops it down because the engine can't respond that quickly from a very low RPM. Bring the RPM up, and it happily responds. Jumps right over stuff like a mountain goat or a four-stroke Italian butterfly. Let's take a moment here to focus on Rich. We don't get a lot of footage of him usually because I can't follow him that closely, but I was able to today because he was just kind of on a play ride, and you can see he's standing up a lot, having a lot of fun, taking a lot of crazy lines, I think just for the fun of it, jumping off into the woods every once in a while, probably also because that's fun, definitely exciting, you never know what you might break. Rich was like on a play ride. I was busting my ass though, let me just say that. I was working hard. Yeah, I was having to bust my ass to ride at this speed because I was still trying to figure out how this thing works. And coming up here, there was a double log obstacle, and this was like the first real insight I had. Get the revs up and the thing will do great things. You can see the revs weren't even up that high. Just got to get out of the basement, and the thing works for real. My skill level hit or miss, but the bike was on point with the revs up. Just keeping the thing on the boil through here, you can see the riding kind of comes alive too. Jumps are higher, it sounds good, momentum through the rock gardens is good. This part right here, I mean, I'm finally starting to figure the thing out. Training my ear to know what the bike wants and what it should sound like really helped a lot. I did have some other adjustments to make. The clutch, the rear shock, as you'll see.
How was that?
Not bad. I am going to change one thing.
I like your plate. Is that custom?
Yeah, I made it myself.
I'm just goofing around, like hitting like rocks. Then once in a while, like whiskey throttle and like shooting to the woods. I've done it 3 times already, which is almost as exciting as when you're going real fast.
It wasn't just like the clutch was dragging, the clutch was dragging. I have this Midwest engineering clutch lever, makes the clutch low effort, but you have to adjust it correctly, or in this case, I have to adjust it correctly, which I hadn't done. So even when the lever was all the way in, the bike was still dragging on the motor, which makes the stalling really a problem, because you can't ever really disengage the clutch. Rich bailed me out. We had just the right tool at the brake, and when I adjusted it just that little bit, oh, it made a huge difference, especially in places like here. Handlebars not touch the ground. Really? It's the clutch, I think. Exactly, so at the beginning of the ride I would have hit that with lower revs and just stalled out and been totally outraged. Now I know better. Weird. So I'm pretty happy with the performance of the front end there. Going through here, you can just hear I'm not quite on the gas enough, don't quite have enough momentum in the motor, and it starts to snatch a little bit. I get better at that as I figured out as I train my ear during the ride. I got just the tiniest little taste of some fast and flowing stuff here. Man, was the 390 great. This is perfect for that bike. Do you have, at the truck, do you have a really small Allen key?
Probably, yeah.
The really small Allen key is what I need to adjust that clutch lever, which I did. Made a huge difference just to be able to completely freewheel, reduce the risk of stalling since there wasn't that constant drag on the motor at low idle, and helped my riding quite a bit. You can see Rich up ahead is taking some crazy line because again he's kind of on his fun ride. I'm taking no prisoners. I go right in for the pass. I'm wasting no time. A lot of my attention on the day was on the powertrain, listening to it back. Of course, I hear the chain slap again, ridiculous. I thought I had it adjusted correctly, but this really long downhill section, kind of just endlessly down, was a real test of the front end, the fork. It's doing a great job. It was plush, very little deflection, good steering control, and that was just on the stock settings, which is fine. I don't care if they're stock or whatever they are as long as they work. Really was nice actually, and gave me a lot of confidence in the front end. Watching this back, I did notice the turn signal still on the front of the bike. That's kind of funny to me, mostly because the turn signals got ripped off the back of the bike after about 2 hours on the trail. And oh, it looks like Rich has taken another crazy line. Little traffic jam here. Let's wait for that to clear up, and here we go. So I put the slow motion pass on Rich here, and then coming up, by this point I'm completely exhausted and I'm reverting to my bad habits. You'll see I hit one of these rocks with a really low engine speed, low momentum, and the clutch dragging right here, and it basically stalls out again. And oh, it's so frustrating. Fuck you. So a mental breakdown there, but like I said, this was, as it turned out, a combination of things. Adjusting the clutch helped immensely. Because then when I pull the lever all the way back, I freewheel. So that preserves momentum, not just physically in the bike, rolling over stuff, but also in the engine, in the internals. It doesn't stall out. It made a huge difference in my ability to control the bike and enjoy the bike. Which makes me think that might be a good prank to pull on Rich. Like misadjust his clutch so he keeps stalling out. No, I would never do that. This section here leads up to one of the, I don't know, for me anyway, the most difficult climbs on the trail. I don't know what makes it particularly difficult. I think it's the lead up. The lead up is really demanding. It gets you all out of shape. This climb right here is a lot of work. It comes after another one that's kind of taxing. Right after you crest this hill, you go down into this little muddy area. And after the end of all that, you almost come to a stop, take a hard left up a hill with these big rocks. Well, actually, now that I describe it, it makes sense that it's really hard. Let's see how I do. Left is up here about 30 meters. Oh, put it in neutral. Okay, that's not going to make it any easier. Here's the left. Fuck, bitch. You fuck. I don't like the flame out. Pissed me off.
It's not much lugging.
It's got to be spinning.
It's got to constantly be spinning. It doesn't like that low RPM.
I noticed.
I'm having fun, but I'm making terrible line choices. But I'm like going slow enough where like I can kind of dab, but then like I got hung up on that log. I was like, oh, I'm gonna pivot turn and hop the back over it. I don't even know how to pivot turn or hop the back over it, but I was like, in my mind, I thought I could do it.
At this point in the ride, I had kind of figured it out, and through sections like this, I'm keeping the revs up and carrying more speed. It forces you to do that, and it works well when you do. Of course, then, Rich took a right when he should have taken a left.
That's not the trail.
It's a green trail.
Yeah, so you don't want to go there. Very simple.
Alright, we're all pointed the right way now, and at the very end of the loop at Foxboro, after all you've been through, there's one final insult. It's fun if you get it right. It sucks when you get it wrong. This one climb, it's like the back of a stegosaurus up through a bunch of rocks. You get through all this totally takes all the starch out of you. You take this last right-hand turn. Take care of me, I'll take care of you. You're not taking care of me. Unfortunately, the GoPro battery crapped out there, because if I could show you the second loop, you would see I kept the thing on the boil almost all the time. We were ripping, and this climb right here is a good example of this like trophy truck approach. Just keep the gas on, go over it, go through it, doesn't matter. It's an unstoppable force. Really enjoying the 390. Thank you, Rich, for getting me out there on a Tuesday, of all things. Who'd have thunk it? Awesome ride. Stay safe, guys. See you on the trails.